Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church, and I'm happy to be with you today. Here it is, the end of November, and Christmas is right around the corner. And perhaps you had a great Thanksgiving, but you kind of skipped over it, just sort of rushing to Christmas, like most people do. Well, during this time, in the church here, we call it Advent, which means the time before. And this is a time when we think about the coming of Christmas. It's not here yet, but it's on the way. And in order to do these devotionals for the next month, I want to look at this time of coming through the eyes of three people: Mary, Elizabeth, and Anna the prophet. These are all found in the story recorded in the Gospel of Luke, and that's my basic passage for this next month. And each individual day, I'll focus on another thought related to that. So, what I want to try to do is help us experience this time before Christmas, maybe somewhat like the main characters did. I mean, after all, they were just human beings. They weren't special people. And in the case of Mary, she's just a teenager. She hasn't been around much. And if you know of a teenage girl who's engaged and looking to get married, they just got this attitude about life that's really precious, even if it's not rooted in reality at all. But that's just an incredible time. And it was an incredible time for Mary too. So let's look at Luke chapter 1, verses 26 and 27 to set the stage for this first week of these stories. The first, here's what it says. In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a town in Galilee called Nazareth, to a virgin engaged to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David. The virgin's name was Mary. Now, the first thing I want to talk about in this series is the idea of hope. Mary obviously had lots of hope about her life and the time with Joseph. I mean, what engaged couple doesn't? Well, I guess there's some, but most don't. And they're anticipating the time of being together, being married. Now, we have to remember that in Mary's day and Joseph's day, the big deal was the engagement itself. In fact, in Jewish thought in those days, if you break an engagement, you have to get rid of divorcement. That's how serious the engagement is. The marriage ceremony is kind of just a culmination of the engagement, but it's the engagement that's the thing. That's what sets everything moving in the direction that it's supposed to go. So here we have Mary, who's hoping to have a life with Joseph. And I want to read a scripture, Psalm 39 and verse 7. And it says, "And so, Lord, where do I put my hope? My only hope is in you." Mary's hoping for a good life. Like I said, most teenage girls, probably guys too, don't really have the ability to fathom what life will really be like, so they can dream. And Mary, like you and me, dreamed. And I'm sure she was infatuated with Joseph. If you can imagine walking down the uh, the streets of Nazareth and maybe stopping by, hearing the action in the carpenter shop, either saying hello or just kind of looking in. She was hopeful. She didn't understand what kind of hope was actually going to happen. And you see, as we start thinking about Christmas, you and I don't really understand what God's doing in our lives. Oh, we understand a little piece of it, perhaps. And perhaps we, over time, make more sense of it. But really, we can't comprehend all that God's doing. And so the passage says, where does my hope come from? It comes from the Lord. If you can sort of visualize Mary and Joseph, two young people in love with each other, enamored perhaps, being like you were if you're beyond that stage in life, being like what it was when you first thought about things like that. But yet, at this point in time, something dramatically different is going to happen. And the angel Gabriel is going to show up and change everything. Have you ever had a time in your life when something happened unexpectedly and it changed everything? Well, most of us have. Now, if you haven't and everything worked just like you planned, God bless you. I always wanted that, but it never happened. But yet, in the midst, I keep hoping. And my hope is based on what God has promised. And this passage said that he sent the angel Gabriel because now is the time in Mary and Joseph's life for God to act. Oh, he was going to act a lot more yet, but this was the critical moment. So when you think of your life and we think about Advent, I'd like for you to think about hope. Who is your hope in? You know, have you had some hopes and dreams that never happened? What do you think your life would be like if they had come to pass? Would it be better? Would it be worse? Well, no one really knows, but God knows what he was doing, and he still does. And while we can wonder about the future, he guides it. While we can struggle with what would have happened if, he knows what needed to happen when. And many times when we've been disappointed, later on we can see that God's hands was at work. And so this Advent, I want you to think about, where has God worked in your life? Where has he moved to get you to where he wants you to go? You may not be there yet. You may not even know if you're on the road yet, but I can assure you, he knows. Well, thanks so much for listening. If you have a concern or a need, let us know. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. God bless you. I'll be back tomorrow and all of this upcoming month with some more thoughts about Advent.